Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. Former President Trump reacts to President Biden's first news conference. What does he have to say about Biden's claim that he left children starving at the border? A string of deadly tornadoes ripped through southern states Thursday. It's the second tornado outbreak to affect the region in a week. We bring you reports of the damage. After the horrific shooting in Boulder this week, Biden says he will push new gun control laws. The Senate Majority Leader says he wants Republicans to work with them. But will the two parties be able to find common ground? Georgia Governor Brian Kemp signs a new election integrity bill into law. The sweeping legislation requires photo ID for absentee voting. And Congress members ramp up support for a new bipartisan bill. It aims to ban any kind of permanent fence around the U.S. Capitol. Republicans are reacting to President Biden's comments about the border during his first news conference. Former President Trump says what they're doing now is outrageous.
Republicans, including Donald Trump, reacted Thursday to President Biden's first press conference and the border crisis.
As many people came, 28% increase in
Biden claimed that Trump let children starve to death at the border. Fox News asked the former president to respond.
Your reaction?
Well, first of all, it's just the opposite. But by the time we finished what we were doing, very few people were coming up because they knew they weren't going to get through. We stopped catch and release, which was a disaster.
Trump said Biden should finish building the wall, and Senator Lindsey Graham claimed Biden's news conference will make immigration problems worse.
His announcement that we're going to open up 5,000 beds for unaccompanied minors is going to increase the flow. Minor children can be with you. So what are we going to do? Unite illegal immigrant families?
And on Wednesday, Arizona's governor said Vice President Kamala Harris is about the worst possible choice to lead border security.
If President Biden's intent was to show that he's taking this issue seriously, he's really done the exact opposite here. He's completely trivialized this issue by putting someone in charge who flat out just doesn't care.
And it's not just Republicans. The Democrat lawmaker who leaked images of migrant facilities is also critical of how Biden is handling the border.
And I sit on the Homeland Appropriations. I get more information from across the river than I get from my own government, which is just amazing. I'm glad they're going to do that because if we don't play defense, using football as an example.
The Biden administration's decision to house illegal immigrants at hotels is raising other concerns. They plan to spend nearly $87 million on a little over 1,000 beds. A fellow with the conservative nonprofit Center for Immigration Studies did the math. He writes, that works out to over $71,000 per migrant paid by your tax dollars, meaning that you are now a co-conspirator to one of the largest smuggling schemes in history. We reached out to the White House for comment but haven't heard back.
A fatal tornado outbreak strikes the southern U.S. The deadly storms swept across Alabama Thursday before heading into Georgia overnight.
Powerful thunderstorms swept from Mississippi to South Carolina on Thursday and continued into Friday. The storms generated tornadoes that knocked over trees and decimated houses. Alabama and Georgia saw the worst of it. Meteorologist John DeBlock says as many 8 tornadoes struck Alabama. DeBlock says one tornado in western Alabama traveled about 100 miles on the ground. It lasted for about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Calhoun County Sheriff Matthew Wade says 5 people died from the storms in his northwest Alabama county. He says, quote, our hearts, our thoughts, and our prayers go to the families, and we are going to do our best to let them know we love them. Residents describe close calls with tornadoes and say they're lucky to be alive. Cindy Smitherman says she and her family hurried into their storm shelter south of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, before a tornado destroyed their home. James Dunaway lives in Pelham, Alabama. He says he fled his upstairs bedroom just before a tornado blew off his roof. The deadly storms then moved into northern Georgia, where another fatality is reported. A tornado struck southeast of Atlanta early Friday morning. One person is reported dead in Noonan, Georgia. Noonan High School suffered extensive damage. Residents and officials are still digging out from under the debris and assessing the extent of the damage.
President Biden said he will push for new gun control measures following the Boulder shooting that left 10 people dead. But the father of the slain police officer in Boulder said his late son would be deeply offended if his death was used to promote gun control.
In his first press conference, President Biden promised that he would regulate the sale of firearms. He said it's a matter of timing. When reporters asked him if he would do that through executive actions or through Congress, he said all of the above. That was all Biden had to say about gun control at the news conference. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said he wants Republicans to join them, but he says if they don't, Democrats will take matters into their own hands.
We prefer our Republican colleagues to work with us on these things. Many of the things I mentioned are bipartisan in the sense that a majority of Republicans support them. But if they don't, our caucus will come together and we will discuss the best way to produce that big, bold action.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said he's open to discussion and that there are different points of view on how the two parties deal with gun violence.
One thing we do know for sure is that these shooters are invariably mentally incapacitated. Mentally incapacitated. This is a vexing problem that is extremely hard to identify in advance. So we will see what the majority leader wants to put on the floor and see what it looks like and have a full, robust discussion.
Homer Talley is the father of the police officer Eric Talley, who was killed in the Boulder shooting. He told TMZ about his son's perspective. He said his son would have been deeply offended to know his death would be used to promote gun control. His father said before he was an officer, Eric enjoyed shooting. He went on to say that just because a maniac goes around shooting people doesn't mean guns need to be taken away. On Thursday night, about 2,000 people gathered at a nearby high school to honor the 10 people killed on Monday. Earlier in the day, attorneys asked for the suspect, Ahmed Alissa, to have a mental health evaluation before his trial continues. The crowd read the names of the deceased aloud. Just before that, a resident read the names of the 8 people who were killed in another shooting in Georgia just days earlier. Alissa is charged with murder in the attack that killed 10 people. He is also charged with attempted murder of a police officer. The DA said more charges are expected.
Georgia State Representative Park Cannon was arrested and forcibly removed from the state capitol on Thursday. This was after she allegedly refused to stop knocking on the governor's door as he signed a new elections bill into law. This video that captured the incident shows Cannon, a Democrat, being handcuffed and forcibly escorted from the building. On the other side of the door, Governor Brian Kemp was signing a contentious election bill in a closed-door ceremony. The bill aims to tighten voting requirements to protect election integrity. But Georgia Democrats claim the bill accounts to voter suppression. Cannon was among several people protesting the bill at the State House Thursday. She was reportedly knocking on the door, arguing for transparency of the bill signing. A spokesman for the Georgia State Patrol said Cannon was repeatedly warned to stop knocking before she was arrested. Cannon was taken to the Fulton County Jail and was released Thursday evening on a $6,000 signature bond. The Arkansas governor signs a bill that bars biological males from participating in women's sports. It makes Arkansas the second state this year to sign a law protecting female athletes. The bill is known as the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. It recognizes the biological differences between males and females and how they lead to different athletic capabilities. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson said he signed the bill after studying the law and consulting with hundreds of constituents on the issue. He says female athletes should not have to compete against males in sports designed for women's competition. Transgender rights groups oppose the law, and the Arkansas chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union has indicated they are not done fighting for the rights of transgender individuals. In a rare bipartisan effort is underway in Congress against any kind of permanent fence around the U.S. Capitol. A bipartisan group of lawmakers is pushing the No Fences Act, which would ban building such a barrier.
The bill basically says no federal funds may be used to install permanent fencing around the Capitol or around the Capitol buildings. Not very complicated, but the statement we make by passing this legislation and then following it will make a big difference.
And I think it would be a huge mistake and send the wrong signal both in our country and around the world if this place of democracy was not accessible.
GOP Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri is one of the sponsors. He's joined by Democratic Senators Chris Van Hollen of Maryland and Democratic House Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, representing Washington, D.C. Van Hollen tweeted that the Capitol is the citadel of democracy and it should not be turned into a fortress. Lawmakers have been debating how to improve Capitol security in the aftermath of the January 6th breach. One of the proposals reportedly includes building a permanent fence. Congress members can now use campaign cash to hire bodyguards. The Federal Election Commission issued the ruling after hours of debate. The decision means House and Senate members can use campaign funds to hire private security without violating a prohibition on personal use. It's for occasions when they aren't under the protection of Capitol law enforcement. The rule comes amid heightened concern about the safety of lawmakers amid the tense political climate across the country. Election Commissioner Ellen Weintraub said via Politico that she never thought of the U.S. as a country where leadership would need armed guards to keep the public at arm's length. Capitol Police tracked almost 5,000 threats made to lawmakers last year. That's up from just over 900 threats in 2016. The heads of Google, Facebook, and Twitter testified in front of Congress in a virtual hearing. This is the second time in 5 months that Congress is calling on them to speak. NTD's Christina Kim has more on the hearing.
The virtual hearing focused on social media's role in, quote, promoting extremism and misinformation. Lawmakers grilled the heads of Google, Facebook, and Twitter on a number of topics including censorship, spreading misinformation, and social media's addictive nature and impact on children's mental health.
Your business model itself has become the problem, and the time for self-regulation is over. It's time we legislate to hold you accountable. That's what we're going to do.
Some lawmakers said the platforms encouraged extremism and played a role in the January 6th Capitol breach. Others spoke out against social media censorship of conservative voices, calling it un-American. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg spoke about the censorship, particularly of elected leaders.
Many people are concerned that platforms can ban elected leaders. I am too. I don't think that private companies should make so many decisions like this alone. We need an accountable process, which is why we created an independent oversight board that can overrule our decisions.
But he did not agree that social media is responsible for dividing the nation.
I believe that the division we see today is primarily the result of a political and media environment that drives Americans apart. And we need to reckon with that if we're going to make progress.
Twitter's Jack Dorsey spoke out against too much government regulation, saying it reduces innovation and choice.
If instead we woke up tomorrow and decided to ask the government to tell us what content to take down or leave up, we may end up with a service that couldn't be used to question the government.
Though he admits blocking the New York Post story on Hunter Biden was a mistake. Google CEO Sundar Pichai defended the need for Section 230.
Our ability to provide a range of information and viewpoints, while also being able to remove misinformation, is possible only because of legal frameworks like Section 230.
And lawmakers lambasted the tech giants for social media's negative impact on children and mental health. Zuckerberg said those claims are inconclusive and staying connected is a broadly positive thing. As for Facebook's plan to create an Instagram for kids under 13, Zuckerberg said they haven't worked through the details yet, but thinks it will be important for parents to be able to monitor. Christina Kim, NTD News.
The Senate plans to vote on a number of items when they get back from recess. These include expanded background checks for gun buyers and a bill that would dramatically change how elections are run.
When the Senate returns in April, we're going to begin to focus on 3 major areas: voting rights and civil rights, economic recovery and jobs with an emphasis on climate change and building back better, and health and gun safety.
Schumer says he will try to work with his Republican colleagues on passing laws, but also hinted that he'll push past them if he senses resistance. The Democrat-controlled House of Representatives recently passed a number of measures that the Senate plans on taking up. That includes the controversial election reform bill called the For the People Act. Schumer says the first things the Senate will do after the break is look at a COVID hate crimes proposal and several administration positions that have not yet been confirmed. Winning an election by votes of only 6 Americans is an extremely small margin of victory. But more Democrats are saying they should not unseat a Republican who won that way. It's all part of a storm brewing over a congressional seat from Iowa. NTD's Allison Lee has the details.
Within a week, 4 Democrat House members have expressly said they do not support the attempt to unseat Republican Congresswoman Mary Annette Miller Meeks. In the November election, Republican Miller Meeks won Iowa's 2nd congressional district by only 6 votes. But her Democrat opponent filed a notice of contest to the Democrat-controlled House in December, claiming she is the rightful winner. Earlier this month, Pelosi told reporters whether she's open to unseating Miller Meeks.
Committee, I did see, as you saw in the press, what they decided to, and they were following as I read it, the requirements of the law as to how you go forward. And how you go forward is the path you're on, and we'll see where that takes us. Yeah, but there could be a scenario to that extent. Yes.
Democrat House member Alyssa Slotkin from Michigan opposes the move, saying, quote, "I'm sorry, I cannot support overturning an election, especially given everything that's gone on." Democrat Chris Pappas from New Hampshire told Fox News this week, quote, "The election is over and it's time to move on." He says this is the same message he sent to Republicans on January 6th. Democrat Susan Wild from Pennsylvania told the Washington Post, quote, "As I have said before in connection with the 2020 presidential election, legislatures should be heeding states' certifications of their elections. And unless there is rampant error and substantial evidence thereof, I do not believe it is the role of House members to dictate the outcome of elections." And Congressman Dean Phillips from Minnesota was the first Democrat to oppose the move. He wrote on Monday, quote, "Losing a House election by 6 votes is painful for Democrats, but overturning it in the House would be even more painful for America. Just because a majority can does not mean a majority should." Meanwhile, House Administration Committee Chairwoman Democrat Zoe Lofgren is leading the effort to investigate the Iowa election. She says the 6-vote margin is so small that candidates have the right to contest the results. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Speaker Pelosi said more about the bid to unseat the Republican Congresswoman. She says as House Speaker, she has the right to unseat anyone. If she wanted to be unfair, she would not have seated Miller Meeks when Congress convened on January 3rd. And coming up, a massive repair project is underway for Amtrak's 110-year-old North River Railroad Tunnel. It's a temporary fix, as building a new tunnel is estimated to cost $10 billion. A new billboard criticizing President Biden's tax plan is up in Times Square. The message is in support of business owners. Find out more on NTD News. Railroad company Amtrak is reassessing its infrastructure. The company is preparing to make much-needed repairs on a busy commuter train tunnel, but the project carries a hefty price tag. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
7 stories below street level on the edge of the Hudson River, workers labor on the 110-year-old North River Rail Tunnel. With a new tunnel potentially a decade away, Amtrak has embarked on an aggressive and expensive program to fix the tunnel's most urgent problems. Officials have estimated the work could cost as much as $150 million. Building a second tunnel into New York is considered a top priority and is expected to cost roughly $10 billion.
We know that just as a nation, our assets were formed at a certain point to where they're all kind of reaching end of life at the same time. We have a lot of century-year-old infrastructure.
The signs of age in the tunnel are everywhere. The 3-foot wide bench walls are the original concrete from 1910 and are chipped and crumbling. Metal plates cover some of the worst spots. Some of the wiring and other fixtures date back 80 years. Inside the bench walls is a network of cables, including the 12,000-volt lines that power the entire tunnel. Any malfunction there will bring trains to a standstill, something that's happened more frequently since Superstorm Sandy flooded the tunnel in 2012. Standing water can also degrade rails, ties, and ballasts, and wreak havoc on the tunnel's electrical systems.
Yeah, we need to get on this because all 50 states are behind on state of good repair for America's infrastructure.
Roughly 1/3 of a mile of track has been designated for replacement. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
In-person court hearings are back in New York City. The courthouses are reopening, even though not all lawyers are eligible for vaccination yet. But one lawyer says he trusts the process. NTD's Don Tran has the details.
In New York City, law and order are coming back inside courthouses. The halls of justice are now open for both civil and criminal trials. Some lawyers are concerned about the reopening, since they are not yet in line for COVID vaccines. But one lawyer says he trusts the Chief Justice of New York to open the court safely and quickly. He also said the justice system is essential and incredibly important to society.
Millions and millions of people count on it, and the justice system is there to to address grievances and to redress hurts and harms. And it's critically important that our system be up and working.
After the court shut down due to the pandemic, the massive backlog of pending cases became worse. Tesser said to reduce the backlog, parties can try to reach a compromise on their own, rather than waiting for a civil trial.
It's difficult, but it might have an unintended side benefit of having people actually talk to each other and try to resolve their matter without waiting for the court to be able to get to it.
Tesser said firms have been able to conduct civil trials virtually for the most part. But when it comes to criminal cases, virtual hearings don't ensure a free and fair trial.
With criminal cases, it's very important that the jurors or the trial judge be able to assess the credibility of the witnesses. And that's not so easy, not as easy on video as it would be in person.
Trials in the city are expected to resume slowly, with each borough handling only a few cases each week. Over 100 trials have been scheduled for this year, and hundreds of jurors have already been summoned in Queens alone. Don Tran, NTD News, New York.
Parts of New York that were once essential to city life keep opening up. The city announced one of its most iconic attractions will soon be in play. NTD's Arian Pastar has the story.
Mayor Bill de Blasio says the show must go on. He announced a reopening plan for Broadway theaters, which are a huge part of the city's culture. But open theaters will not only benefit the city's culture, but also its economy, which has been weakened by lockdowns.
100,000 jobs in our theater industry, an economic impact of $15 billion a year. We need it back on every level.
The plan is to reopen the industry by vaccinating staff and guests.
So the next 4 weeks, we'll be setting up dedicated vaccination sites specifically for the theater community, the theater industry. It'll be staffed by workers from the theater industry.
The vaccination site will be set up on Broadway. Mobile units will be arranged for off-Broadway staff. In order to keep reopening, the city is trying to vaccinate 5 million people by June. Right now, 3.5 million vaccination doses have been given. Shows were cancelled until June, and even though a reopening plan's been set up, it's not exactly clear yet when Broadway theaters will be up and running again. But the mayor says it might be in June. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen admits taxes will need to go up to fund the federal infrastructure project. And naturally, not everyone's happy about that. The Job Creators Network is one of them. It's an advocacy group that believes government policies are getting in the way of economic prosperity. To let President Biden know what they think of his new plans, they put up a pretty interesting sign in New York City. NTD's Phil Zoe spoke with them.
Right here in the heart of Times Square, there's a new billboard. It's criticizing President Biden's tax plans. You can see it right above me here. It says, Biden wants to raise taxes on small businesses, not on our watch. The Job Creators Network made the sign.
Biden has declared war on small business.
When critics ask how can they be so disrespectful to a sitting president,
what's really disrespectful is the thought that they're even contemplating raising taxes on our small business owners after they had to survive the 2020 pandemic.
President Biden says a majority of the new tax breaks will go to people making less than $90,000 a year.
And how much for the top 1%? Zero. Top 1% get zero.
But many small businesses reinvest the money they save back into their workers.
I was able to give bonuses, raises, incentive programs. I even pay 100% health care.
But with Biden's new policies, that might all change.
Like it would hurt not just the employee, but of course the family, and then ultimately the community, because you're not able to do as much as you were going to do before.
instead of hiking taxes and handing out free money, the Job Creators Network says the government should help people learn new skills so they can make money themselves. The new billboard will stay up for 3 weeks. Phil Zoe, NTD News, New York.
Not your typical big city wildlife spotting. A coyote was captured from the front steps of a Chicago apartment building.
As I was walking by that door over there, it's kind of like stairs leading down, right? I noticed something growling at me, and I thought it was a dog at once, but didn't look like a dog. It was a lot skinnier than a dog, right? So I'm like, could it be a coyote? Anyway, I'm just doing my job here in the neighborhood, so I'm walking by, see a couple residents, one with a nice baby girl. I'm like, hey, if you walk by, just be careful. There was a coyote there, kind of growling at me. Don't want you guys getting hurt, so just let them know. And then I'm assuming they were probably the ones that called the animal control and animal service.
Chicago police officers surrounded the animal with guns in the Rogers Park neighborhood. Chicago Animal Care and Control safely got the coyote into a van. But before that, an unsuspecting pedestrian came across it first. The coyote was taken to Flint Creek Wildlife Rehabilitation. It's expected to be released into a forest soon. And just ahead, victims of alleged sexual abuse at California University get a sizable settlement that breaks multiple records, and it adds to previous settlements from the same scandal. Homeless tents in California's Bay Area may need to relocate. One city plans to clean up portions of its 20-mile biking trail. Residents are concerned about where the homeless will go. More on that in just a minute.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
During the 2008 recession, Americans lost over $2 trillion from their 401ks. For many people, retirement was no longer an option. But do you know what tried and true investment nearly doubled its value following the recession? Gold. Protect your money. Buy gold. For your free direct bullion guide to buying gold, call 1-800-757-7050. Start your collection today. We can't control political volatility, inflation, massive government debt, or the wild swings of the stock market. But we can control where we put our money. Gold is easily outperforming the stock market the last 20 years. Protect your money. Buy gold. For your free direct bullion guide to buying gold, call 1-800-757-7050.
The University of Southern California reached a record $852 million settlement with more than 70 women who accused a school gynecologist of sexually abusing them. This as the women accused the school of a cover-up. The law firm representing many of the women said the payout marked the largest sexual abuse settlement with a university. And they say it's the biggest personal injury payout by any college or university in U.S. history. Former campus gynecologist George Tyndall practiced at USC for nearly 30 years before the university suspended him in 2016. The university then allowed him to quietly retire without immediately reporting him. Separate $215 million and $50 million settlements bring the total payout for the scandal to $1.1 billion. There are no further civil claims for this case. Many homeless people set up camp in California's Bay Area. In one of its larger cities, they may soon need to relocate. NTD's David Lamb has the details.
Coyote Creek Trail stretches about 18 miles in the city of San Jose. On part of this Bay Area trail, many homeless individuals have made their home.
Along the creek, there are several tents set up. It looks like they've been homes to people for a long time now. Now, less than 20 feet away, there's a trail that's designed to be used for hiking and biking. However, there's been less activity due to the increased homelessness. The city does plan to sweep the tents out so that the area is used for public again.
San Jose's goal for its trail safety plan is to ensure public safety and sense of security. Water pollution from the camps is also an issue, and they are especially concerned about children walking past.
This is a student's walk to George Shirakawa Senior Elementary in the Rock Springs neighborhood.
The city began taking down tents and other makeshift homes, removing homeless individuals last week. Alternative shelter may be offered, but based on availability. Opponents of the sweep are against destroying tents and property. They want the homeless to have a place to go.
It is immoral. There are children out there. There are people who have nowhere to go. We need to help people. We need to make sure that we know where they're going first before we decide to kick them out.
A nearby resident told us he thinks the renovation is a good thing, but if the population isn't properly housed, he's afraid they may relocate to another area or highway. One biker says he's never seen any problems with the encampments.
It doesn't bother me at all. I just keep buying my own.
The resident saw more tents pop up in another part of the city.
Recently, a couple of days ago, I see a lot in Story Road before 101. Yes, a lot of things. They relocated somewhere. I never seen that on that side before. So
even though San Jose is in Silicon Valley, which is considered a wealthy area, homelessness is still an issue. The city has tried to find solutions many times. Part of the trail is scheduled to be opened this August, and the whole length will be completed next fall. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
A close call in Texas. There, an 18-wheeler almost slammed into a Wharton County deputy. Earlier this week, Corporal Jeff Fiala was responding to an incident. While he was walking toward the wreck, a truck came barreling down the street. It hit the guardrail before resting against the stopped vehicle. Fiala was just a few inches away. No injuries were reported in the crash. Wharton County Sheriff's Office is reminding people to slow down when they see emergency lights. And coming up, Secretary of State Antony Blinken reaffirms America's intention to work together with allies. He says collective efforts are more important than ever in dealing with challenges from China. North Korea launches 2 ballistic missiles near Japan. That's while the U.S. Army chief says he sees joint military drills with South Korea as an issue of balance. That and more on NTD News. America's top diplomat is telling European allies that the West needs to cooperate now more than ever. That's how they can deal with challenges coming from the Chinese regime.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is emphasizing the importance of cooperation between the U.S. and its allies. When he visited the NATO headquarters in Belgium on Thursday, Blinken said it's more important than ever for the U.S. and its allies to work together to outcompete China on any playing field.
I came here very much with one particular focus in mind, and that was to make clear the United States' determination to revitalize our alliances and partnerships, to re-engage strongly in them, and to work closely with our allies and partners.
Blinken accuses Beijing of undermining the international trading order that the U.S. and its allies built after World War II. He says, quote, "They are actively working to undercut the rules of the international system and the values we and our allies share." NATO's Secretary General agrees that if NATO countries are united, the EU, NATO, and their allies are well positioned to address the rising challenge of communist China. However, Blinken also says the U.S. won't force its allies to choose between U.S. and Beijing.
But that doesn't mean that countries can't work with China where possible, for example, on challenges like climate change and health security.
Last week, Blinken visited the country's Asian allies, Japan and South Korea. The two countries also support the joint response to challenge from Beijing.
The Chinese regime is trying to deflect accusations of forced labor by bringing up a 19th century photo showing slavery in the U.S. The regime's foreign ministry then claims that forced labor is an American issue, not a Chinese one. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on the story.
China's foreign ministry is upping the country's back-and-forth criticism with the U.S. to a new level. During a Thursday press conference, spokeswoman Hua Chunying once again denied China's forced labor problems. In doing so, she instead reversed the criticism and pulled out a 19th century photo to back up her claims. The photo pictured black slaves in the U.S. picking cotton well over 100 years ago. She claimed the image is evidence that forced labor is a problem related to America, not China. She noted that more than 40% of Chinese cotton is picked by machines and that no one is forced to pick the fibers. Speaking of freedom of speech in China, she said Chinese people also have the freedom to express their views. At the same time, she shifted the blame onto foreign companies. She cited a Chinese saying, which says Chinese people will not allow foreigners to eat Chinese rice, yet smash Chinese bowls at the same time. The saying implies that Chinese people won't allow other countries to benefit from China, yet harm it at the same time. Hua spoke in name of all Chinese people, but not all Chinese citizens seem to agree. One netizen responded on Twitter saying, "I am a Chinese citizen. I also want the right to express my views freely. I want to see news from outside China without any internet censorship. I want to criticize leaders without being summoned by police." Another user pointed out that if 40% of China's cotton is picked by machines, the other 60% must be picked by humans. Someone else questioned another photo Hua showed, this time from the Xinjiang region, and whether or not it actually shows the real situation there. He suggested that if people from Xinjiang aren't under threat of the Chinese regime, they should shoot and circulate photos themselves. While still another user asked, quote, "Isn't it embarrassing to draw an analogy between today's Chinese Communist Party and American slave owners from nearly 2 centuries ago?" The spokeswoman's comments come amid ongoing conflict between the two nations and alongside U.S. sanctions on China. Popular clothing brands Nike and H&M have officially gone out of fashion in China. Their people are burning clothes and shoes bought from the brands as a result of a new Beijing propaganda campaign. But not all of those in China are following suit. The Chinese Communist Party's, or CCP's, media mouthpieces have called for the boycott. It targets all brands linked to the Cotton Development Association. That's because more Western companies are standing up against human rights abuses in China's Xinjiang region. Following H&M's lead, companies like Nike, Adidas, Uniqlo, and even furniture retailer IKEA have vowed not to use cotton from the area. Videos of Chinese people destroying products from these brands have since gone viral. One clip shows a man cutting up H&M brand clothing while saying, quote, "You eat and drink from us and then you break our pot. I must destroy you." He's referring to a Chinese saying that echoes the Western concept of biting the hand that feeds you. Another video shows people burning Nike brand sneakers. The American sportswear brand is one of the most popular labels of its kind in China. But not all Chinese people are following the regime's directive. A report from the Chinese language edition of Radio France International seems to tell the opposite story. The report features one user's comment on Chinese messaging app Weibo. He claimed Nike products online were actually selling, quote, "super well" on a digital shopping platform, adding that the trade volume increased to the max. Some netizens also wrote that their friends were celebrating and looking forward to an expected discount on Nike products. Chinese media reported long lines outside of an H&M store located in Beijing Wednesday morning, all waiting for the store to open.
In the past week, North Korea keeps on using missiles to test the Biden administration and denounced Washington for going forward with a joint military exercises with South Korea. The U.S. Army chief said Thursday that he sees those exercises as an issue of balance.
North Korea launched 2 ballistic missiles into the Sea of Japan Thursday. Before that, they had fired off multiple short-range missiles over the weekend and denounced Washington for going forward with joint military exercises with South Korea. U.S. Army Chief James McConville says he saw the exercise as an issue of balance.
When we do an exercise, we have to be thoughtful to understand that even if it's a tactical exercise, what are the strategic impacts of us doing that? And then you got to figure out, is the cost of doing that, or is that the best way to do it? General
McConville also emphasized that the Army needs to make sure they can provide credible and ready forces to take a position of strength in diplomacy efforts.
And in order to do that, You have to practice. You have to train.
The U.S. Army is in the middle of the most significant transformation in the past 4 decades. Last Tuesday, the Army released information explaining how and why they plan to become a capable force that can operate across multiple domains. Their goal is to be able to dominate adversaries in sustained, large-scale combat operations by 2035.
And still to come, the European Union threatens to cut off Astrazeneca's virus vaccine exports if the company doesn't deal with the local shortfall. The United Kingdom decides it will fly its flag on government buildings year-round. Previously, it flew only on designated days. Find out more on NTD News.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical, so I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies, or call 1-800-509-8500. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
It's just clear as day. The media, whether it's broadcast, cable, or print media, has become extremely biased. And I started looking online for alternative ways to get information. And I saw an ad for a free trial. And I looked at it and I said, Epoch Times. I mean, come on, this is end of days type of stuff. I mean, what are they going to be talking about here? And I said, well, it's a free trial. Let me dig in. Is it giving me both sides? Is it giving me an objective point of view here? I have looked for opportunities to see where they might be biased, and I don't find it. It has given me a level of trust in media that I didn't think I'd ever get back. I love the Epoch Times because it has renewed my faith in the idea that a reliable, responsible, non-biased source of information is available. And I can say that I love it because of that.
AstraZeneca isn't living up to its promise to the European Union. The company is only planning on supplying a fraction of the vaccines to the EU, which they're not too happy about, and they may even decide to block exports of the vaccine.
As Europe is gripped by a third wave of coronavirus infections, tensions are mounting over its faltering vaccine programme. EU leaders voiced frustration on Thursday at the massive shortfall in contracted deliveries of AstraZeneca's vaccine. Of 300 million doses due to be delivered to EU countries by the end of June, AstraZeneca aims to deliver only a third. The EU's executive is now threatening to block exports of the vaccine.
We have to and want to explain to our European citizens that they get their fair share. And therefore, the second principle is that companies have to honor their contract to the European Union before they export to other regions in the world. And this is, of course, the case with AstraZeneca.
This week, the European Commission unveiled plans to tighten oversight of vaccine exports. This would allow greater scope to block shipments to countries like Britain with higher inoculation rates. As of March the 23rd, Britain had administered nearly 46 shots for every 100 people, compared with under 14 per 100 in the EU. Britain says it did a better job negotiating with manufacturers and arranging supply chains. But the EU says it should share more, notably to help make up the shortfall in contracted deliveries of AstraZeneca shots. EU leaders, however, are divided about how tough a stance to take. France has made clear it's fully behind blocking exports, but the Netherlands and Germany have been more cautious. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the EU must respect global supply chains and fight protectionism, while Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte warned of broader consequences if the bloc followed through on its threats.
The Union flag, commonly known as the Union Jack, is normally flown on UK government buildings on certain days only. But from this summer, it's to be flown every day. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us the story.
The present Union flag dates from 1801. It's normally flown on 20 designated dates from UK government buildings. Now it's going to be flown all year round. Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden in a new guidance saying the Union flag unites us as a nation and people rightly expect it to be flown above UK government buildings. This guidance will ensure that happens every day unless another flag is being flown as a proud reminder of our history and the ties that bind us. The first Union flag was created in 1606. It combined the flag of England, the St George's Cross, with the flag of Scotland, the White Cross of St Andrew. Then in 1801, after the Act of the Union, the College of Arms designed a new flag. It included a red psalter, the cross of St Patrick, chosen to symbolise Ireland. That's the flag we know today. There is also a call from the local government secretary. Our nation's flag is a symbol of liberty, unity and freedom that creates a shared sense of civic pride. People rightly expect to see the Union flag flying high on civic and government buildings up and down the country as a sign of our local and national identity. So, how do people view the change?
I think at a time of trouble, of desperation, of people fearing for the future, they regard the Union flag as something to hang on to, something which reminds us of the past when we were a considerably stronger power than we are now.
With local authorities and other local organisations encouraged to follow suit, we could all be seeing a lot more of the Union flag. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, London.
In France, psychiatrists say more children are developing mental health issues since the beginning of the pandemic. NTD's David Vives has the details.
The CCP virus pandemic isn't the only health issue hitting France. On Monday, child psychiatrists say there's been an 80% hike in children hospitalized for psychiatric issues. Violaine Guérin is the president of a group of doctors dedicated to researching the virus. She has observed the same situation in her own work and from other doctors.
I can tell you, people ask me all day long how their children are doing. I spoke with a mother who told me, we have 7 people in our apartment. The lockdown measure forces us to stay home. My 8-year-old girl says she would like to commit suicide. She is tired of life. This is serious.
She says she's afraid COVID restrictions bring long-term consequences. Wearing masks and lockdowns may disconnect people from their own lives.
We are going to pay a heavy price. The measures are creating psychosomatic illnesses. It might take years to cure people after this crisis passes.
The data she has from doctors shows more teenagers are getting depressed, and more children under 3 show issues sleeping and learning how to talk. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Still to come, wild boar run rampant in Israel's 3rd largest city, Haifa. Residents are afraid of the animals, which can become aggressive and dangerous. Find out more in just a minute on NTD News. The London Zoo is calling for help, but don't worry, they don't need you to feed the crocodiles. They have 3 young alpacas in need of names. To help, the zoo has chosen a short list. There's Alpacachino, Cusco, or Snowball for the white one, Pumpkin Spice, Lima, or Cookie for the one with brown-colored fur, and Toffee Nut, Cuenca, or Humbug for the other. The young male South American alpacas were born on a British farm last year and moved to the zoo after the beginning of this month. You can enter your choices online, with the winning names to be announced just ahead of the zoo's reopening on April 12th. Wild boar have become an ever more common sight on the streets of Israel's 3rd largest city, Haifa. They seem to have taken up residence there since the pandemic began. Some locals say they're concerned about their safety. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Residents of the city have lived with boars for several years, but new litters of piglets are reigniting the debate. The animals are strong, fearless, and can be aggressive. Some residents have had enough and are protesting outside City Hall.
The city needs to start doing what's needed in cooperation with all authorities possible in order to kick out the wild boar from Haifa, period. return them to the wild or any other way which will help us to bring back our feeling of security and safety and quality of life, because this is a catastrophic situation.
Haifa is surrounded by the forested slopes of Mount Carmel, where the wild boar thrive. With most people stuck inside due to the pandemic, the pigs have felt free to move in. Wild boar are a protected species in Israel, with almost no natural predators. Authorities say there's no easy solution to the problem. In an attempt to protect residents, City Hall has installed gates to limit the boar's movement. The city has also erected signs to warn drivers and pedestrians of the pigs' presence.
Wild boar are a national and global problem in many places, and so is other wildlife invading the public space. This is not an easy thing to deal with in other places as well. Within our responsibility, we will do everything in order to find balance between the wild boar and people walking in the city.
Dorfman said they believe there are about 500 boars roaming the city. Activists claim there are thousands. Residents frequently upload videos to social media of wild boar encounters on their streets, sows and their piglets navigating crosswalks, boars devouring plants in parks, and raiding dumpsters. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Dyson has unveiled new vacuuming technology, though it seems like something from a sci-fi movie. The appliance company is releasing the Dyson V15 Detect Vacuum. It uses lasers to detect hidden dust as small as 10 microns. It's also equipped with a sensor to prove what's been sucked up. During the pandemic, Dyson says 60% of people are cleaning more than they ever have before. Let's turn our attention to health and wellness. We have 4 tips for making sure your marriage or partnership survives the pandemic.
The pandemic has thrust many spouses into spending more time together, and those normal mundane concerns about money, domestic chores, and child rearing have taken a back seat. Now we are contemplating health and even mortality, not to mention remote working, reduced freedoms, and the confines of a shared living space. All of this is pushing many relationships to the brink. Psychologists and relationship experts have come forward in droves to offer advice for stressed out couples. Here are 4 tips that are crucial for keeping a marriage or partnership strong amid the global crisis. Number 1, remember this is not normal. A poll released in 2020 found that 1 in 5 partnered people were fighting more with their significant other during lockdown. Yet the long-term effects of the pandemic on cohabiting couples remain unknown. Berkeley psychologist Robert Levinson told Greater Good magazine that people are asking themselves, what if I get sick? What if my partner gets sick? What if we can't get enough food? What if we lose our job? This is a crucible that people are being thrust into, and it's just not business as usual. So it's key to be mindful about how you handle your relationship and remain hopeful that life will return to normal as it should. Number 2, allow yourself to feel bad. As routines are disrupted and tempers flare over being stuck indoors, it stands to reason that moods, energy levels, and productivity suffer. Iris Mouse, who is an associate professor of psychology at Berkeley, says that everyone right now is experiencing some form of stress. And while these responses are incredibly common, many people negatively judge themselves for having them. She added that the more people that allow themselves to feel negative emotions, the quicker they resolve themselves and the less damage they cause. And don't forget self-care. The roles of gentle exercise, sleep, and meditation have never been more important. Number 3, watch out for these 4 behaviors in yourself. According to psychologist John Gottman, there are 4 destructive behaviors we need to watch out for. He calls them the 4 horsemen. These horsemen are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. These 4 behaviors have ample opportunity to thrive in a lockdown situation, so it's imperative for both to take a step back and work out how to meet halfway. Number 4, communicate, communicate, communicate. Vanessa Marin, a New York Times columnist and licensed psychotherapist, advises partners to check in with one another daily and be intentional about spending time together. She also mentioned the importance of carving out separate working spaces if possible. Marin also mentioned the importance of asking your partner how they are doing on an emotional level. The lockdown can strengthen some marriages, but only if spouses are willing to work at it. Don't forget to reduce stress. that can help to heal your relationship. You may find help from practicing relaxation techniques such as meditation, breathing, or even massage. Some simple lifestyle changes have also been shown to have an effect on stress levels. Sticking to a healthy diet full of fruits and vegetables and getting plenty of exercise can make a big difference. Thanks for watching.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.